So in the movie John Wick, he shoots a plethora of different handguns. I mean, the list is actually so long that I'm not going to go through the entire list. However, the one handgun that tends to stand out to everybody is the 2011 that he shoots, the Combat Master from Taran Tactical. And that gun cost around $4,800. However, I'd be willing to bet that this is the handgun that John Wick wishes that he had. This is the CZ Shadow 2. Just follow the first link in the video description below. It'll also be pinned in the comments. It'll take you to a list with links to many of the that we're talking about in today's video. So this started life as a basic urban gray CZ Shadow 2, and I recorded a couple of videos with it. And the only things that I have changed on here so far is I've gotten the slide work done, which we're gonna go over in detail, and I got the frame Cerakoted. We're still gonna do more to this gun moving forward, but I wanted to compare the differences between the way the recoil impulse and how fast you can shoot this gun with just simple slide work. And aside from that, I got the Surefire X300 on here. And the main reason I got the Surefire on here is one, I like the Surefires. And the other one is because I have the MSP holster. I'll have a link to this over at the list as well, but this is a universal IWB appendix holster that fits any handgun that uses the Surefire X300. And this way I can go to the range and still have a holster despite the model of gun that I have. I really like these. I don't carry with these. I kind of just use them for the range because whenever I practice or try to train, I don't do it with OWB. I try to do it with IWB just so I can draw from concealment, and this really helps. If you are interested in the holsters that I like to carry, go check out last week's video where I did the EDC update and I go into further detail on the types of holsters that I like to carry and why. So this CZ Shadow 2 started its life as an urban gray Shadow 2. I didn't get any of the special stuff. It had the double action, single action trigger because these come in a bunch of different configurations. You know, you can get the orange, which has upgraded internals and barrels and stuff like that. And then they have the single action only that has the blue grips. And then they had the double action, single action. This one was only around $1,250, I believe. I could be wrong. I'm trying to remember. Price was around the $1,200 to $1,300 mark, somewhere in there. And to be really honest with you, I'm just not a fan of their urban gray. And let me show you what I mean. So this is their urban gray for the CZ75P01. It looks gray until you put it next to something that's actually gray. This has more of a FDE, flat dark earth tan to it. I don't know if it's coming through in video, it depends on how I color grade, but I am a huge fan for what's called sniper gray, and that's what we did. I sent the whole gun to Primary Machine, and I asked them to Cerakote the frame and to do their new slide cut on here. Now this is called the Harbinger V2, and we'll talk about the differences between the V1 and the V2 here in a minute, but essentially, they didn't make it look stupid. They did a little window cut up here on the front. They did some window cuts here on the side. And then they did some relief cuts here on the side. And they put a tiny, tiny little logo for Primary Machine right there. And then as an option, I had them re-add the CZ Shadow 2 logo. So just to give it a more OEM look to it. Because although this has been modified, it looks pretty OEM. On this side, it's kind of the same thing. We got a relief cut here, and then we got a window taken out here. And then on the front right here, they also got a relief cut, and it looks like it almost gives it a little bit of a snout on the front. But other than that, everything else on this gun is stock. Now you will notice something a little bit different about this that I typically don't do on a gun. I left it without an optic cut, and we're gonna go over why here in a little while, because I am gonna put an optic on this, but I did wanna mention briefly why I chose not to get one right now. Back up top. So before we go over the pricing on all of this stuff, it's a lot more affordable than you might think. I wanted to talk about how the gun shoots compared to the way that it shot when it was factory. Now, when this gun was factory, it shot really well out of the box. It was almost as if nothing needed to be done to it. But if you have a discerning hand, after you've shot many firearms, you can find some things that you can tweak and tune just to make the gun that much better. In the last video that I made about this, I compared the Shadow 2 to the Shadow 1, and we noted that the weight on the front of the gun on the Shadow 2 was much heavier than the Shadow 1, and it was way softer to shoot. You can shoot it a lot faster, and the recoil impulse was dramatically different. But now that the slide has been lightened, I've noticed that it tracks so much faster, meaning the slide reciprocates reciprocates faster, thus bringing the sights back down faster, getting you back on target faster. I'll be honest with you guys, I'm not a professional shooter. And in fact, I think in the past year, I've gotten worse at shooting just because when COVID hit, it was the middle of the summer and I couldn't go shooting outdoors in Arizona. And then most of the indoor ranges wanted to require masks for the longest time. So I didn't really even get back into like the saddle of like really shooting up until about a couple of months ago. I've even noticed it in myself since really getting back into it. I'm like, wow, I really need to practice more. And that's what I'm gonna do. Say that to say this, you're gonna see mistakes in my shooting. I'm never gonna deny that. Like, I'm not an expert, but I can tell you if something works or if something doesn't work. And it doesn't take a professional shooter to know those things. First thing I noticed right off the bat when shooting this is I can shoot it so much faster than I could when it was stock because of the way that the slide tracks so much faster. You know, I don't find the muzzle rising off of target when I shoot it fast. I don't find it drifting to the left or the right or going down. I find it just staying right where I had it centered. And I'm using iron sights on here. And as I mentioned earlier, I'm gonna talk about the red dot and all that stuff here in a second. The primary machine offers two different slide cuts for the Shadow 2. They have the Harbinger V1 and the Harbinger V2, and the one that we have is the V2. The main difference between the two is the Harbinger V1 doesn't have any windows cut out on it, whereas the Harbinger V2 does. And they only vary in price by about $20. And then there's other options you can do. If you choose not to get an optics cut like I did, it's actually $100 less. So the Harbinger V1 starts at $380. If you choose to get the CZ Shadow 2 logo re-engraved, it's an additional 20 bucks. And so it'd be like $400 with an optic cut with the Shadow 2 logo re-engraved. And the V2 would be about $420. But if you don't get an optic cut, it's $100 off of that. So theoretically, you could get the V1 for $280 if you don't get optics cut or get it re-engraved with the Shadow 2 logo. And then the Harbinger V2 is like $300 if you don't get it re-engraved and if you don't get the optics cut. You know, there is a phrase that goes around in the gun community that modifications don't make you a better shot. And I agree that you shouldn't always depend on modifications, but they are 100% wrong. Modifications can, in the right application, given that you have the right skill set, make you a much better shot. Obviously, if you have flaws in your grip, if you have flaws in the way that you align your sights and your presentation and all that stuff, modifications aren't gonna help you much. But if you have all of those things kind of down, you know, somewhat, you are gonna see a huge difference in your shooting ability. Now, a lot of people say, well, you shouldn't rely on that. And somewhat I do agree, but just a simple example. If you could take a Glock 17 and you could take this 2011 right here. Now, if you put both of those guns in a ransom rest, they're gonna have pretty much the same mechanical accuracy. And what that means is, what's the accuracy of the gun without human error? So if they have the same mechanical accuracy, why are so many more people more accurate with this versus a Glock 17? And that has to do with the weight of the gun. And because this gun weighs so much more and has the front of it weighted down to prevent recoil, it's gonna make you a better shooter. It's not gonna make the gun more accurate, but it's gonna make you more accurate. So, and even if you left this gun stock, it's still kind of like having a modification because it's so much more heavier. Now let's talk about what we have in store for the future. I mentioned that I didn't get the optics cut, and the main reason that I didn't get the optics cut from Primary Machine is because this is primarily used as a competition gun, they don't have a way of cutting a new dovetail and then putting the red dot in front of it. I got a buddy, and I'm not gonna mention his company's name right now because he is a very small shop and he's local to me, but we will shout him out in the next video. But he is gonna cut this to accept the HoloSun 507K. These are amazing red dots for the price. I prefer the 507K over the 407K because the 507K has a smaller dot than the 407K. And plus this one's multi-reticle, whereas the 407 isn't. But my main reasoning is this has a 3.25 MOA dot, and I believe the 407K is around 6. And I just prefer the smaller dot. Just depends on what you prefer. But what we're gonna do is we're gonna cut this slide back here. We're gonna cut a new dovetail. We are gonna put irons on here that we can co-witness with the red dot, because I'm gonna use this as a home defense nightstand gun type deal and a range toy. Over at the list, I will have this just in case you're wanting to get yours done and you can get your rear sight ahead of time. He figured out which rear sight is needed so that you cannot have to change out this front sight, and he can make the 507K sit low enough so that you can still co-witness. And I thought that was really amazing. I think this sight cost me about $30 or $40. It's just an Ameriglow Glock sight that's suppressor height, but you need a specific height in order for it to work with this front sight. And so in the next video, we will have the red dot mounted. You know, I'll probably go over to his shop and do some filming there, and then that way you guys can see what it's all about. But I've known him for a couple of years, and he seems to be doing really good work, so we'll see how that goes. And then after that, I am still looking into getting a straight flat trigger in it. And I did get one from CZ Custom, and I do not like the way that it pulls. I just don't like it. It's basically CZ Custom makes a flat trigger for the Shadow 2, and I'm not a fan. It's very slippery. So I'm gonna look into another option, which we'll bring up in a future video as well. Maybe it'll be in the same video as a red dot, maybe not. I haven't decided yet. Depends, you know, when and if the trigger arrives. So we do get more stuff coming for this. I might be changing out these grips. I haven't 100% decided yet, but we're not done with this gun. But I will say this, knowing what I know now, is there anything that I regret about this? No, I'm 100% satisfied with this sniper gray Cerakote on the frame, you know, the black on the slide, and this slide cut. I can't believe how much faster this gun shoots with the slide cut. And given the fact that the slide cut is only about $300 if you don't get the red dot, that's amazing. So with this gun, although I didn't buy this gun, Big Daddy Unlimited sent it to me, it was only like $12.75. It was close to that. I might be off by a couple of dollars. And then with $300, we got the slide cut. So far we have $1,600 invested into this gun. All we got left to do really is a red dot and a trigger, maybe some grips, and we should be able to make something that really competes well with the Staccato XC or XL, and that competes with the Combat Master 2011 that John Wick uses. But you know what? I've been wrong a lot. I might be wrong now. Let me know what your thoughts are down in the comments section. Have you shot the Combat Master or the STI DVCP Hominy or the Staccato XC? Let me know. And then if you compared them to the CZ Shadow 2 that's been modified, I'd love to hear your guys' thoughts, because I personally haven't shot them yet. Hopefully we can change that in the future. Hit the like button if you liked the video. Hit the dislike button twice if you disliked the video. Subscribe if you're not already, but until next time, I love you. You guys stay sexy.